I never thought I'd see it with my own eyes. I wish I hadn't. I'd heard rumors, of course. Everyone in the department had. Whispers about some thing the government had its hands on. A relic, an artifact, an anomaly as they called it. People joked about it being like the Ark of the Covenant or some doomsday device buried under a forgotten desert. No one thought it was real, not even me. But then I was transferred to Lab X. I was the third lead researcher assigned to study it, and now I know why the first two left. It wasn't retirement or relocation like we'd been told. They were taken out. After being in that room with it for too long, no one could have been the same. When I first arrived at the lab, there was an unsettling tension hanging in the air. No one would tell me anything, but I could see it in their eyes. The unspoken dread that gnawed at them. My predecessor, Dr. Conway, had vanished without a trace just weeks before I took over. I figured it was the usual paranoia of working in Black Ops programs. Things go wrong, people disappear. But then there was the anomaly. It was housed in Sub-Basement D, a level buried so deep under the ground that no signals could get in or out, surrounded by layers of concrete and steel. Getting down there required a full security clearance, biometric scans, and a long elevator ride into what felt like a tomb. It smelled sterile, like a place scrubbed too clean of anything human. I remember the first time I saw the object itself. The lead security officer, a man named Ross, escorted me into the containment chamber. He had this gaunt look like he hadn't slept in weeks. As we walked, he kept his distance from the containment unit almost instinctively. That should have been a red flag. There it was, sitting in a reinforced glass case, lit by the sterile fluorescence of overhead lights. It looked simple, unassuming even. A small tarnished metal cube, maybe 6 inches by 6 inches. The engravings on its surface were barely visible unless you looked closely. At first glance, it looked like an ancient artifact, maybe some kind of forgotten religious symbol. But there was something about it, something off. The first thing I noticed was how the air around it felt heavier. The second was the silence. Not just the absence of sound, but a silence that pressed against your skin, a deep hum you could feel more than hear. The briefing I'd received was vague, frustratingly so. According to the notes, the item had been discovered in the catacombs beneath a remote monastery in Italy. A priest had stumbled upon it during a routine excavation and immediately reported it to the Vatican, claiming it was not of this world. The Vatican's files on it were sealed, but eventually the item ended up in the hands of the U.S. government, who then tasked Lab X with studying it. That was where I came in. I had a PhD in applied physics with a specialty in experimental materials. They wanted to know what it was made of, how it worked, if it even worked. My first week was spent reviewing data that made no sense. Every test that had been run on it returned inconclusive results. No one could determine its age, composition, or origin. It wasn't any metal we'd ever encountered. It was dense, much denser than anything its size should have been, but at the same time almost weightless when handled. We weren't allowed to touch it directly. The last researcher who did ended up hospitalized, his hand covered in burns that no one could explain. By the third week, I was restless. We hadn't gotten anywhere, and the higher-ups were starting to breathe down our necks. They wanted answers, needed answers, but there were none. It was maddening, like trying to solve a puzzle where none of the pieces fit. Then the visions started. It was subtle at first. I'd close my eyes at night and see flashes, just glimpses of something dark and twisted. At first, I chalked it up to stress. I was working long hours, barely sleeping, obsessing over the anomaly. But then, one day, while reviewing data in the lab, I caught something out of the corner of my eye. A shadow, quick, fleeting, like someone had passed behind me. I turned, but no one was there. That night, I dreamt of the cube. It was open, hollow inside, and from its depths spilled something alive, something moving, writhing, like a mass of blackened tendrils. I woke up drenched in sweat, gasping for breath. The next day I noticed the same look in Ross's eyes, the same gaunt, sleepless stare I'd seen when I first arrived. He wouldn't speak to me anymore. No one would. It was like the anomaly had infected us all, creeping into our thoughts, warping our minds. One night I stayed late, alone in the lab. I was reviewing some EMF readings from the cube. Nothing unusual, when the power flickered. Just for a second, but it was enough to send a jolt through me. When the lights came back on, I saw it. The cube was open. I hadn't touched it. No one had. It was supposed to be sealed, locked behind layers of glass and security measures, but there it was, split open, and from its center came a low, pulsating hum that vibrated through the walls, through me. I don't know why I approached it. Curiosity? Fear? It felt like something was pulling me toward it, like gravity itself had shifted. As I drew closer, I saw them. Figures, shadowy and distorted, swirling inside the cube like a maelstrom of darkness. And then I heard it. A voice. No, not a voice. A presence. It wasn't speaking to me. It was in me, burrowing into my thoughts, into my soul. I felt it clawing at the edges of my mind, unraveling me from the inside. I don't remember much after that. Just flashes, screams, the sound of metal tearing, of glass shattering, alarms blaring, red lights flashing. I think I was the one screaming. When I woke up, I was in the hospital. They told me I'd destroyed the lab, tore it apart with my bare hands. No one else had survived. Ross was found dead, his body mangled beyond recognition. They said I'd been muttering something over and over in a language they couldn't understand. The cube was gone. They said I was lucky to be alive, but I don't feel lucky. I can't close my eyes without seeing it, without hearing it. It's still in me, whispering, waiting. And I know it's out there, somewhere, waiting to be found again.
Come on, pick up. Hi! I love you so much. Can I have $2,500?
No? Why on earth do you need $2,500?
Oh, for an escape room?
You're joking, right? What kind of escape room costs $2,500?
Prison?
I'll be there in 10, idiot.